It's strange, isn't it? How the things we least expect sneak into our lives and change everything. When I first moved into the apartment with Caleb, I never thought of him as anything more than my roommate. He was uncomplicated. The kind of guy who left his shoes by the door, hummed off-key while he made coffee, and always remembered to buy more milk when we ran out. And I had Ryan. My boyfriend of 3 years. My steady, reliable, everything is planned out Ryan. But life has a funny way of unraveling the things you think are certain. The first time I really noticed Caleb was during the chaos of moving in. My arms were full of boxes, sweat dripping down my back, when he appeared in the doorway holding 2 cold beers. "You look like you could use one of these," he said, flashing a grin that was equal parts charm and mischief. His brown hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it all day, and his t-shirt clung to him from the summer heat. I took the beer, grateful, and sat on the floor next to him. "Thanks. I owe you," I said, clinking my bottle lightly against his. "Just don't hog the bathroom in the mornings and we'll call it even," he replied with a wink. I laughed. It was easy with Caleb, effortless. At the time, I thought that's all it was. For months, our lives intertwined in the comfortable rhythm of roommates. We watched bad movies together on Friday nights, shared takeout when neither of us felt like cooking, and vented about our days over a glass of wine or a beer. Caleb was funny, kind, and safe. He didn't ask too many questions about Ryan or why I sometimes looked sad after hanging up the phone. And I didn't ask about the string of girls who never seemed to stick around for more than a few weeks. We had boundaries, or so I thought. It started small, a touch on my arm that lingered a second too long. The way his eyes would meet mine across the room, intense and searching. I'd catch my breath and tell myself it was nothing, that I was imagining things. After all, I had Ryan. And Ryan was everything I was supposed to want. But then came the night it all changed. The power had gone out during a thunderstorm, and Caleb and I found ourselves sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by flickering candles. The rain hammered against the windows, and the sound of thunder rolled through the apartment. I was wrapped in a blanket, nursing a glass of wine, when Caleb leaned back against the couch, his head tilted toward me. "You ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" he asked, his voice soft, thoughtful. I hesitated, the question catching me off guard. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "Like you're doing everything you're supposed to do, checking all the boxes, but it's not real. Like you're on autopilot." I didn't answer right away. The weight of his words settled over me, and I felt something stir in my chest. "Yeah," I admitted finally. "All the time." His eyes met mine, and in that moment, it felt like he could see right through me. Before I could think better of it, I blurted out, "Sometimes I wonder if Ryan and I are just comfortable. Like we're together because it's easier than not being together." Caleb didn't say anything, but his gaze didn't waver. And then, so slowly it was almost imperceptible, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. My heart stuttered in my chest, and I forgot how to breathe. "Audrey," he murmured, his voice a low whisper. The air between us was electric, charged with something I didn't have the strength to name. And then his lips were on mine, soft and searching, and everything I'd been holding back came rushing to the surface. That night, I let myself fall. And for a few stolen hours, nothing else mattered. Not Ryan, not the future, not the consequences. Just Caleb and the way he made me feel alive in a way I hadn't in years. The morning after, reality came crashing down. Caleb and I avoided each other for days, the unspoken tension in the apartment almost unbearable. And when Ryan called, his voice warm and steady, the guilt was suffocating. I told myself it was a mistake, a moment of weakness that wouldn't happen again. But it did, over and over. Caleb and I became a secret neither of us could resist. Late nights, stolen kisses, whispered promises that we'd figure it out somehow. But we both knew the truth. There was no figuring this out. Not without breaking something or someone. And then everything changed again. 2 pink lines. My hands trembled as I stared at the test, my heart pounding so loudly I thought it might drown out the world. I was pregnant, and I didn't know if it was Ryan's or Caleb's. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, my mind racing. Ryan and I had been together for years, but our physical relationship had been distant, sporadic. Caleb, on the other hand, my stomach twisted at the thought. How could I have been so reckless? For days, I kept the secret to myself, unsure of what to do. I couldn't tell Ryan. I couldn't tell Caleb. Every time I looked at either of them, the weight of what I was hiding threatened to crush me. But secrets have a way of coming out, don't they? Audrey, what's going on? Caleb asked one evening, his eyes scanning my face. You've been distant. Is it us? I couldn't hold it in any longer. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. I'm pregnant. His face went pale, and for a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, softly, is it mine? I don't know, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Tears blurred my vision, and I buried my face in my hands. I don't know what to do. Caleb's reaction was a mix of shock and determination. We'll figure it out, he said. But his words didn't erase the fear that clung to me. And then there was Ryan. Sweet, oblivious Ryan, who still called me every night to tell me he loved me. The guilt was unbearable. In the weeks that followed, I felt like I was living 2 lives, torn between 2 men and 2 futures. Caleb wanted to be there for me, no matter what. But Ryan was stability, safety, everything I thought I wanted. How could I choose between them? How could I bring a child into this mess? One evening, I sat across from Ryan at a cafe. It was our usual spot, a cozy corner table by the window where we'd shared countless dates over the years. But tonight was different. My hands trembled as I held my coffee cup, the warmth doing little to steady the cold dread pooling in my stomach. He looked up from his phone and smiled at me, that familiar, steady smile that had always made me feel safe. For a moment, I wanted to turn back, to bury the truth and pretend that everything was fine. But I couldn't. Not anymore. I need to tell you something, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. The words felt heavy, like they might sink me if I let them linger too long. Ryan frowned, setting his phone down. What's wrong? You've been acting strange lately. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. The weight of what I was about to say pressed down on my chest. How could I possibly explain this without shattering everything? I took a deep breath, my fingers tightening around the coffee cup as if it could anchor me. There's no easy way to say this, I began, my voice shaky. But I have to be honest with you. You deserve that much. Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly, concern etched into his features. Audrey, you're scaring me. Just tell me what's going on. My throat felt dry, and I forced myself to meet his gaze. I've been unfaithful. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Ryan blinked, as if he hadn't heard me correctly. What? He said, his voice low and almost disbelieving. I'm so sorry, I said quickly, the tears already welling in my eyes. It wasn't planned. I never meant for this to happen. His expression shifted from confusion to something sharper, more painful. With who? He demanded, his voice tight. I hesitated, the truth lodged in my throat. But there was no point in lying now. With Caleb, I whispered. Ryan's face crumpled, a mix of disbelief and anguish contorting his features. He leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his hair as if trying to process what he'd just heard. Caleb? Your roommate? His voice cracked, and I winced at the pain laced in it. How could you do this, Audrey? How long has this been going on? I couldn't look at him. It started a few months ago, I admitted. But it wasn't supposed to happen, Ryan. I swear. It got out of control. Out of control? He repeated, his voice rising. You mean you kept choosing to do this, every time you chose him over me? The words hit like a slap, and I felt the tears spill over. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, I said, my voice trembling. I know I've hurt you in a way I can't take back, but I need you to understand. I didn't mean to hurt you. I never stopped caring about you. Ryan let out a bitter laugh, his hands gripping the edge of the table as if it might steady him. You didn't stop caring? Are you serious, Audrey? You've been lying to me for months. You've been lying to my face every time we talked, every time I told you I loved you. And now you're asking me to understand? I'm not asking for anything, I said quickly. I couldn't keep lying to you. You deserve to know the truth. Ryan stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, he just looked at me, his eyes filled with a pain that I knew I'd caused. You're right about one thing, he said finally. I do deserve the truth, but I also deserve better than this. Better than you. His words were a knife to the chest, but I didn't argue. He was right. I watched him walk away, his figure disappearing into the night, and for the first time, I truly felt the weight of everything I'd lost. When I returned to the apartment, Caleb was waiting for me. The look on my face must have told him everything, because he didn't say a word. He just pulled me into his arms, holding me as I cried. For a moment, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, we could figure this out together. But that illusion shattered a few days later. I sat across from Caleb in the same apartment where everything had started. The words felt heavier than ever as I prepared to tell him the other part of the truth. I need to talk to you about something, I said, my voice quiet. He looked up from his phone, curious. What's up? I hesitated, my hands fidgeting with the hem of my sweater. I'm pregnant. Caleb froze, his expression unreadable. What? I'm pregnant, I repeated, my voice barely audible. And I don't know if it's yours or Ryan's. His face went pale, and for a long moment he didn't say anything. Then he let out a long breath, running a hand through his hair. Audrey, I don't think I can do this. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not ready to be a dad, he said, his voice strained. I never wanted kids, and this wasn't supposed to happen. You know that. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. So, what are you saying? That you're just going to walk away? He looked at me, his eyes filled with something that resembled guilt. I don't know what else to do. This isn't the life I imagined for myself. I'm sorry, Audrey. Tears blurred my vision as I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Sorry? That's all you have to say? I thought you cared about me. I do care about you, he said quickly. But I'm not ready for this. I can't be what you need me to be. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I'd lost Ryan, and now I was losing Caleb too. The realization hit me hard. I was going to have to face this alone. Over the next few weeks, I started looking for a new place to live. Staying in the apartment with Caleb was too painful, and I needed a fresh start. The thought of being a single mother terrified me, but I didn't have a choice. This was my reality now. As I packed up my belongings, I thought about all the mistakes I'd made, the people I'd hurt, and the life I'd thrown into chaos. But as I rested a hand on my growing belly, I knew one thing for sure. I would do whatever it took to give my child a good life. Even if I had to do it on my own,